22 million black victims of Americanism are waking up, and they're gaining a new political consciousness, becoming politically mature. And as they develop this political maturity, they're able to see the recent trends in these political elections. Any minority that has a block of votes that stick together is in a strategic position. Either way you go, that's who gets it. You're in a position to determine who go to the White House and who stay in the doghouse. You're the one who has that power. You and I have never seen democracy. All we've seen is hypocrisy. When we open our eyes today and look around America, we see America not through the eyes of someone who has enjoyed the fruits of Americanism. We see America through the eyes of someone who has been the victim of Americanism. We don't see any American dream. We've experienced only the American nightmare. We haven't benefited from America's democracy. We've only suffered from America's hypocrisy. And the generation that's coming up now can see it and are not afraid to say it. 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 And are not afraid to say it.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. You're tuned into Black Westchester Presents the People Before Politics radio show. On a few minutes late. We're not having a regular show tonight. Doing kind of a best of. The first hour we will be showing an interview we did with author Terry Watson. Very powerful interview in his new book. I do not have the name in front of me. Well, you'll hear all about it. But anyway, welcome to the show. Thank you all for tuning in, all of y'all who tuned in. And without further ado, we're going to get into the Terry Watson interview. 339. Give me the real talk since 2014. Our next guest, and I'm sorry, Terry, I just seen a private message. I would have told him to hold on so you could have talked to him. He had asked me to tell Andre to stay on a little longer so you could talk to him. But, I can definitely connect you. That's not a problem. So our next guest, Terry Lee Watson, founder of Strategies for Justice, BWMP LLC, has been presenting on the topic of race and white supremacy for over 20 years. Mr. Watson has presented at universities, K through 12, social justice organizations, and conferences. His most recent focus has been with law enforcement through his presentation, The Battle with Moses People, what happened when Black Lives Matter meet Blue Lives Matter. We've had a run-in with Blue Lives Matter. A true believer in having civil discourse. Mr. Watson constantly challenges perspectives, leading to him writing this book. Welcome to the sick mind of a sane person, where he asks the questions how we as Black conscious people participate in sustaining white supremacy. And the title of the book is Welcome to the Sick Mind of a Sane Person, Deconstructing Racism and White Supremacy. Welcome to the show, my brother.
Welcome, my brother. Oh, it's great to see you both, man. Oh man, I was listening to the brother beforehand, and listening to that father's story. I just started thinking about an incident that happened to me and my daughter at the doctor's office, and it goes beyond the court system, right? And so, right. One of the things that got me going, and I don't get angry often. So let's put that in pretense. I don't get angry often, but I took my daughter to the doctor, and the thing is too, I understand the protocol for when your daughter reaches a certain age, they want to talk to your daughter by themselves, and that's I support that, right? Because because we want to make sure that there's a space for young teens, especially young daughters, to come forward if there's any kind of sexual abuse in the home.
Absolutely.
But my daughter and we have a really good relationship, and so my daughter was like, I like my father to be in the room. And when my daughter says that to the doctor, that should have been the indicator to bring me back to the room. So when I get back to the doctor's office, and with my daughter, the first thing the doctor says to me is, I think we're going to have your wife coming with her. I said, why? What's wrong? I'm her parent too. Whatever issues that my daughter may or may have, or what you want to discuss, as her father, I'm just as responsible for her well-being as my wife is. Right. And I guess she came on. She was talking about, there were certain topics she wanted to discuss with my wife and not me. And I was like, that's a problem that we currently have, is the way that not just the justice system, but the medical system, the education system, how they treat in Black fathers, man. And when that brother was telling that story, I just got a flashback to how angry I was. And my daughter, being the smart woman that she's growing up to be, she sort of picked up on that, and she made it very clear that she asked to bring me back in a room way before they came and got me. And then I found out, fast forward, that when my son goes to the doctor with my wife, she doesn't have to wait in the waiting room. Huh? Exactly. And I said to myself, we know that there are many young men out there that is assaulted by women, and they should have that same opportunity to tell what's going on too. So when I heard that brother's story, I was like, yeah, I can. He experienced it through the justice system, and I experienced it through the medical system. So it's something that we got to retrain America's mind.
Yeah, exactly. And it falls into some of the things that you're talking about. I didn't get to finish the book, but I got into it, and I highlighted some things that I wanted to talk about. But it falls into redefining, right, how we think as Black men, right, redefining the narrative of Black men, and I think that for whatever reason, us being the age of the toxic man, right, and the age that Black men were silent. Like I talk about with my friend, like this last presidential election, right? Yeah. Black men had no voice.
No.
Was it you better not say you didn't like Kamala, right? You laughing, but you know, man, like you
wait. I go a step further. Going back 4 years, a female came into the studio. We was doing a show in the studio, and told me that I was a sexist because I wasn't supporting Hillary. I was supporting Bernie. Like, she looked me in my face and told me that I was a sexist because I wasn't supporting Hillary. And we've had sisters say that, oh, what's wrong with you? You're not going to support the Black woman for AG with Tish James? I said, actually, I am supporting the Black woman, but I was supporting the other Black woman. You know what I'm saying? But it was just like, you know what I'm saying? But I was just like, I've had women look me in the studio, like in my face, and told me I was a sexist because I was not supporting Hillary. You know what I'm saying? So this is even before the Kamala thing.
Like, I just if I was to write book number 5, right? Let's put this out there, right? Because this is book number 1. I'm working on 2 and 3 simultaneously, right?
Right.
But so I was fortunate enough to speak to the 4 sisters out of Baltimore. They filed a class action lawsuit against their police department, right?
Right.
They were talking. They were mentioning, all of the abuse that that took place in the police department that mean harassed sexually, racial discrimination, you name it, right? And at the end of our conversation, I said, did you have support? And then, hell no, not from black men, but not from black women either.
Wow.
You dig?
Mm-hmm.
You dig? So one of the things that got me thinking is talking about the sick mind, right?
Exactly.
We get to the point where we are so used to that tokenism that we are not looking for substance. And I went on, and I mentioned this before too. I said there's the same things that I was critical with Hillary Clinton, or with Trump with, was the same things I was critical with Hillary Clinton with, right? And I, when I talk about racism, especially about racism, it sounded on that eugenics movement, right? And Hillary came out very clear that she was a supporter of the eugenics movement, right? And so when I think about when folks are trying to call you out because of you not supporting someone based on their identity, I'm always asking, where's their substance at, right? Where's their record? And yeah, but you're right. You couldn't come out. You couldn't say anything this election. Again, it was, and again, I I'm a political cynic. That's why I call myself, right? I'm always, I used to say, I said, as a black person choosing a political party is like being in a bad relationship. You you should leave, but you're so used to being screwed, right? So I got to the point where when I look at politics, and I know some politicians, and they'll say, "Hey, can you come out and support me?" And I would say, "Here's my political agenda. Can you support it?" And then we can start talking about what I can support. So yeah, that's a great conversation, man. Politics.
What you just said was very powerful, and something we're going on 8-year anniversary next month, and we've been preaching this for 8 months. We have to stop giving away the black vote, realize the power of the black vote, and every other group of people. Candidates have to go to them to explain what they are going to do for them before they get their vote. With us, we just give our vote and then start asking for stuff and try to figure out why we ain't getting what we asked for. You know what I'm saying? So what you just said is, like, they asked for your support and you was like, yo, can you support my agenda? Like, that's what women of Westchester, my mother has always told me, my mother understanding the power of our vote and just stop just giving it away, or better yet, not voting. You know what I'm saying? Like, just, so.
That's even worse. Yes. And it was interesting because, I mean, how many black people have their agenda ready to give to their politician? Right.
You may be the first. You may be the first person in the 8 years of Black Westchester that I've actually heard say that.
Right.
Actually,
they knock on my door. They come in. The politicians knock on my door. I'll be willing to let in my house. We're gonna have a drink, and I'm gonna pass you what I need you to work on. And I need a timeline to go with that too, right? So, one of the things that I found, and again, this really let me write in this book, right? Is when we try to ask for some change, we are trying to ask for change by doing the same thing that was always been done, and then we're surprised that change hasn't happened, right? And so when and there was a situation, and there was a politician that we invited to the table, and they came in with what I call the your typical political talking points. They came in with the talking points. They were nice. There was press. They were clean talking points, and they were and what made us as a group upset, this group particular, was we gave that politician specific questions to answer during this 90-minute conversation, and not one of those questions were answered.
Really?
Right? Yeah, and so we no, I mean, it wasn't even the difficult ones, right? I mean, maybe for him it was difficult, but it wasn't difficult questions. It's how are you going to deal with some of the acts of bias and hate against the BIPOC community, right?
Yeah.
This was the height of 2020 when we started to see a lot of attacks happen, right?
Right.
And we were asking those simple questions like, as a politician, what legislation can you push to do a police reform? And specifically, we were asking for no knock warrants. We were asking for carrier's law, because that was one thing. That's another one. We were asking for specific things, right?
Right.
And what we got was, oh, let me look into that. Well, you do that, but until you do that, you kept my vote out, right? Because that's how we gonna do it, right? Exactly. I'm not gonna be voting for. We gonna look into it. So I think we need to start as a community, start listing out our agenda. That's the reason why I couldn't be mad at Ice Cube. I couldn't be mad at him.
No,
I mean,
that was something that even the most honorable Elijah Muhammad said. You hold them accountable. If you want my vote, but other what?
Wait, but the thing is, though, you're talking about when he met with Trump, right?
No,
he tried to meet with the other side.
He wanted to contract with Black America.
Oh, okay, right.
This is. We give you a vote. This is what you say you're going to do, and we're going to hold you to it. But other ethnic groups do it without even talking about it.
Right. It's just normal.
Right. It's normal.
And it's expected by the candidates. Like, they know going in, you're going to have to meet their needs and their concerns and their agenda, or you're not walking out with that group support.
Right. And the reason why I couldn't be mad at Ice Cube, and the biggest criticism that you saw come on that was people were saying, who's Ice Cube to come up with a Black agenda? My response to those people was, where's your agenda then? You don't like his, come up with your own.
Wait, and the answer to that is a Black man in America. Like, everybody should have
that. That too, right? And again, I think that we are, and this is so important, that as we're trying to progress in the political field, in the medical field, education, the home, we're gonna have to retrain America's mind on what they could expect from us as a people.
No, we gotta train. I think
we gotta retrain our mind. We gotta retrain our minds first,
right?
Because yes,
you're scaring people right now, right? You know that, right? Just this conversation, right? It scares people, because people are sitting in their offices or sitting in their home, wherever they may be watching this show right now, and they're saying, "Wow, this guy's going to make it uncomfortable for me." Right? He's going to make my white counterparts look at me and say, "Do you agree with that Negro right there?" And you're going to and I have to say no, even though deep down they know something has to change.
Yes, yeah, and AJ, to go back to what you were saying too, bro, you're right. We gonna have to change our own mindset, right? And again. And it's going back to the book now. When I wrote the book, I was really addressing that one question throughout the whole book. And as a Black conscious mind, and as my Black conscious mind, how do I participate in the sustainability of white supremacy, right? And that's one of the things that, when I put this book out, I knew that people were going to self-reflect, and I want them to. I want them to, right? I want them to start thinking, I just did the first book signing, and I said, if I could commit myself to be honest with myself and then be vulnerable to put that out there for people to read it, there's no excuse for my white brothers and sisters to do the same exact thing, right? You as a person could look at, religion, God forbid, look at religion. If you can look at all the institutions that surround you, and you can begin to say, where can I identify ways that white supremacy is being sustained, right? And when you start doing that, and you looking at yourself, that's how your mind becomes sick. Because when you start looking at things that you've been saying you've been fighting your whole life, and you realize not only have you not been fighting it, but you've been helping sustain it. That's how you get to that sick mind, you know. So it's something that we would have to retrain America. We got to retrain ourselves. We got to retrain our personas, right? What does that look like for people? And we got to really start having these honest conversations, right? You know, and start with the area that's closest to you, which is the family.
Right.
It's not, and that's where this conversation needs to start, is with the family. There's a part in this book where I realized just after the Trump election, a lot of my colleagues were, you know, they were really upset about the outcome of the election. And then, if you remember, we all went home to Thanksgiving, right? So the election happened, then Thanksgiving happened, right? And I don't know about your table, but there wasn't any arguments around my Thanksgiving table. And I mean, I'm talking about my extended family too, right? I'm not talking about my own. I'm talking about extended family. There is no. Again, let's make this clear. There are both Republicans and Democrats in my family, but no one was arguing about the outcome of the election. I went back to work and I realized that my fellow white colleagues, that was not the same experience. I heard there was a lot of turmoil, there was a lot of arguments, and that got me thinking. I was like, well, this is where I think we need to learn is if you're at a table and you have this discussion about politics and your family can't even come to a normal conversation about how they disagree with that, then in America we gonna have a serious problem. A serious problem.
Absolutely.
And you can't do that around your own kitchen table. How are you going to do that as a nation, right? So I just think it's an interesting concept, and I love tuning into this. Even last week, there's that brother from Russia that was commenting. And I was watching this on Facebook, so I don't understand. He was on YouTube, so I had to go back to the YouTube and really look at his comments, right? Really go through them, because not all of them was posted. And,
right. Yeah, because there was quite a few more.
Yeah. So I got thinking to myself, I was like, well, man, I need to send him a copy of my book. Maybe he gets some of the answers from there. But you know, I definitely appreciate
that was
the
first time ever. I don't know if it was first tuning in, but it's first time ever asking a question. We hadn't seen the name before. I wanted to say, and one thing, and then get back to the book. Like when you talk about changing the mind, changing our minds, it reminded me of, and this NBA playoff time reminded me of Pat Riley when he first took over for the Knicks. And he said in his book that he wrote, he said before he could put one play in place, before he could do any, physical, the exercise and everything, he had to change the mindset because it was a losing mindset going on. And he had to change their mindset to they are winners or could be winners before he could do any of the academic basketball stuff. You know what I'm saying? And it seems like we're back at that again as a Knicks fan. It seems like we're back at the losing mindset again. But it was interesting that he said that. He spent a great deal of time just changing the mindset before running plays, before giving his basketball philosophy. We talk about how he won championships. He had to change their mindset. And we have to do that in our community. We have to do that in our families. We have to do that in all our settings before we can actually, do that, change other people's minds about us. We have to change our own minds. Yeah.
That is absolutely right. Yes.
I wanted to, I underlined some things that you said, right? And I was like, man, Terry, man. You know what I'm saying?
I'm gonna get in trouble.
Wait. But you got to understand where this is coming from. Most of the time, it's Damon writing stuff, and I'm hearing, damn, that Damon. Like, so for Damon to be like, man, this got to be powerful. I'm waiting to hear it.
So, because, all right, this sentence right here brought me back to January 6th. And where and when I start talking, you probably understand where I'm going. Where white supremacy, right, changed the narrative, and even looked at January 6th, an insurrection, as patriotism. But when you said in the book, the most extraordinary story of American patriotism is the story of the runaway slave. Yo, dude, you blew my mind.
Yes.
Because that is the major struggle for freedom.
Yes.
Explain. Yeah, come on, man. Explain on that.
Man, well, I want to have to backtrack for 1 minute with that one to get to true understanding of that. So I'm going to put you in the mindset for a second. I'm and I think that probably came. Was it the first or second chapter, Damon? Do you know? Was that in the?
It was walking to running, entering the mind of white supremacy.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes, brother.
Yeah. There was a time. Okay, so I was at a 4th of July event, and I was sitting there, and I was looking around. People were enjoying themselves. They were celebrating. They were celebrating this holiday that represents freedom and justice.
Right.
And
but we wasn't free.
Well,
right.
Not just that. I'm looking around and I'm looking at these faces, and I'm looking at people smiling and laughing and joking. And for some reason, I had a little, like, one of those vision flashes, And I remember there's the same kind of faces you saw when bodies were being lynched. Okay. And I started thinking to myself, where does our patriotism lie as a black body, right? Because we get to the part where we want to be so. I mean, the whole second chapter called The American Celebration talks about this. We want to be so involved in this dream called America that we'd be willing to do anything to do it, including breaking down our own mindset, breaking down our own consciousness, and trying to transpose it to something that we're not, right? And so when I thought about the story of the runaway slave, if you could imagine being a slave and being in the land of the free, right? And you got to make a decision. Do I stay a slave in the land of the free, or do I break away to true freedom, right? And the runaway slave, and I have a whole book on runaway slave narratives, right? And as I was going through that book, each story said something unique to me, but there was one story in particular. So there was a slave who was a slave of a high politician, right? And this politician, treated his slave well. He gave them food, even a lot of slaves that make money on the side, dressed them well, and this slave still ran away. Okay.
Wow.
And when a slave was questioned, why did you run away? He said, my master could give me all this stuff, but he could never give you my freedom.
Wow.
Now let's think about that. There's a part of the book what I wrote I called I am not a success. I said I am blessed, but success is what I yearn to be. Right? We get to the point where we look at power, money, all these things as freedom. And you can have all the money, all the education in the world, and you talk about this all the time, right? We look at politicians, right? You can have all the success, quote unquote, success in the world, but still have the mentality of the slave. And most importantly, never, ever wanted to break free, because you become comfortable in where you're at. So you can imagine that slave who was dressed well, who was fed well, was treated well by his master, but still he was like, my master could give me everything material, but could never give you my freedom. And that's the reason why he ran away. And that's something that I think when I talk about the sick mind is, how do you get to that point? Right? How do you get to that point where you say, all right, I might have what I might see as success, right? I might have what I see as, being part of this patriotic stance. But what does freedom actually looks like? And I think for me, it's when you could be truly unapologetic without having to worry about losing your livelihood.
Exactly.
right? You should be able to be vulnerable enough to be unapologetic and not worry about losing your livelihood, because, like you said, Damon, right now there's gonna be someone that's gonna say, "Hey, you agree with Terry Washington?" and that person gonna have to say no, just keep their livelihood.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Man, I've been there.
Yeah, I know. So yeah, this was what
we get a lot of people that say they agree with us, but they can't come out and say it. Like they agree with the topics or with a statement Damon made or an article that I wrote, but they, because they work in City Hall or whatever the structure is, they can't publicly admit that, or they're gonna lose their pension or whatever it is.
Oh yeah, you know, is what's interesting about that too is Damon knows I've talked to a lot of police officers over the last couple of years, right? And when George Floyd happened, my cell phone was blowing up, and it was from police officers, both black and white, saying this is not policing, right? And I'm thinking to myself, cool, you need to go to your departments and have that conversation,
Exactly.
right? Because don't come tell just me that the black friend that you might have that you're keeping your cell phone. You need to go tell your departments, like, hey, we need as a department, we need to come out and make this stance up against what have you not. Even in the when we was in Mount Vernon, right, and we was talking about looking at Kenneth Chamberlain Jr. Right. There should have been a bigger outcry in that community, not just from the community, but from policing themselves, because the brother was in law enforcement, right? Talking about that Blue Lives Matter. What about his blue life, right? Where did that play into that conversation, right?
And he was a veteran. You talk about patriotism. He was a veteran.
And he was a veteran. You know, I again, Kenneth Chamberlain Jr., that brother is, absolutely fire. Love him. I love the fact of what he's doing, how he's took this tragedy and brought to light a new conversation. But the whole conversation that what got me is when he said,
for the record, that's White Plains Police Department.
White Plains Police Department. Yeah. When he said White Plains,
and she gonna be texting me.
Oh yeah. She worked for my brother.
What's wrong with Terry? He know that's not my
word. White Plains. When he said White Plains have their own George Floyd.
Exactly.
Right. Right. And you think about that, and because you have people who are not going to say, hey, I support that. I support it because they're afraid of losing their livelihood. Right. And the same thing happens with, anytime you see. Now I had this pack, maybe my own self pack. I didn't put this in the book though, but about 4 or 5 years ago, I said that I wasn't going to speak out against anyone that is speaking about Black liberation. Right. No matter if I agreed of their tactics or not.
Right.
I myself would make that pact. I would not speak out against them, either in person or publicly or behind their back. Right. So every time someone would say, hey, Terry, what do you think about X, Y, and Z? Even if I don't agree with their tactics, but their mission is Black liberation, I say, well, that's my brother, that's my sister. I can't talk about them. And I think if we start doing that, imagine how powerful that would be. If we as a community was like, we're not going to speak out against Black liberation anymore, right? So next time someone comes to me, say, yo, man, heard what Damon said? I'm like, yo, that's my brother. I ain't gonna speak out against him, right? Imagine how powerful that would be if everyone in the community did that.
Exactly. And
so that's where we need to go. That's where we need to go.
Especially since they use, and historically they've always used one of us to take another one of us down.
Right.
Like they use that face to make Muhammad Ali, like how dare he not go fight for this? They put Jackie Robinson up there. Like, I don't know why he won't fight for this great country that lets us make all this money. You know what I'm saying? Like I had lost when I first saw that, I lost a lot of respect for Jackie Robinson. I hear what he did, but to allow himself to be used like that to tear down Muhammad Ali for not fighting for his standing his cause,
Right.
Go ahead.
Well, they do that all the time, man. But I also think with Terry, I'm like, you got some great quotes, and things that that you say in the book, even though I didn't finish, and I still got to finish it, but the little that I read before the show, I'm like, yo, dude, like, you say this
Yeah.
when dealing with racism and the historical trauma it has dealt, those who can participate in eliminating racism are not ready to engage. Damn, that's your politicians, that's your preachers, that's it. They have the positions to eliminate it.
Yes.
And they still don't. And
Yes.
even like politicians.
Yes. Yes. And that one was specifically written about a politician who owned slaves by the name of I think it was Dixon, if I'm not mistaken. And so he passed away. The senator passed away, and his wife wanted to make sure that he was remembered as a benevolent, senator whose slaves loved him. She even said in the book. She even said in the book, when he died, they came and they had tears that was truthfully mournful. Oh man. And I thought about, this is probably one of the most, as I described this particular part, I said this is probably the sickest my mind ever got, just to even think about that concept. Is your husband, who was a senator, had the power to push forward the abolitionist movement,
Right.
but instead decided I would just be a good master, and that would be good enough. Right. And I think when we look at politicians and let's say this leaders, I'll throw in that community leaders, I'll throw in there pastors and preachers, anyone that's going to lead a flock. Let's put it that way. Right. You're always given the opportunity to actually do the right thing. But somewhere along the lines, you decide, you know what, I'm going to choose either money or power over the right thing, right? So I give you an example. Locally, the police chief, the police department was like, we want to collaborate with an organization that Terry works with, and to deal with X, Y, and Z. And the police chief told his department, if you're going to bring Terry in, FYI, he's going to hold you accountable, so just be prepared for that. Right. And the reason that is because I said, I'm going to put you on my calendar, and I'm going to email you every 3, 6, 12 weeks to say, where are we on this item? Where are we on this item? And if you don't respond, I will drive to your location, and this is where it comes down. So if I'm going to sign my name on a dotted line, right, you are committing yourself to an ongoing conversation, right? And I think that's where leadership needs to be. And at the same time, we get to I think maybe you said this, or maybe I can't remember who said this on the show, but if you got someone saying like, everything is going to be all right, that means someone has sold out already. Like it's someone.
It's the time for healing. They sold you out. Once they
sold you out,
they already sold you out. They sold you out. I have advice with Black Panther.
Yes, and I love that because I talk about healing a lot, right? Healing is so important, right? But before you get to healing, you got to get to that truth, right? I know folks who only want to talk about it's time to heal, but they haven't acknowledged the truth yet. Even acknowledge it. Exactly. Forget dealing with it. Haven't even acknowledged it yet. They're talking about healing. Like, how are you going to heal something you don't even know what it is? Right.
Exactly.
And so, again, I'm a huge fan of healing. I always go on the record. I said, as a country, we are so addicted to the trauma, and we always avoid the healing. I put that in the book multiple times, right? We always avoid the healing. But the other part about that trauma is, as America or as a country, as a society, we haven't even acknowledged the trauma yet, or where it comes from. Oh, how is it sustained? And when I talk about racism, people, again, I'm not talking about like and the funny part about this too, I have never in my life called someone a racist. This is another thing I want to mention too. I have never called someone a racist. I have asked. I had a police individual one time called me on my phone out the blue, and he asked me, "Do I think police is racist?" And I said, "Well, I don't want to answer that question. Instead, I would like you to tell me what have your department done to eliminate white supremacy." Right? I don't got time to talk about racism anymore,
Right.
because racism is a part that's like it's like a pawn that's being used in white supremacy. When we think about racism, because again, Damon, you were at this meeting, but they were talking about diversifying law enforcement, bringing in more black officers. And one funny thing about that, I was sitting around this table, I'm listening to the story of these black officers, and they're all talking about how much trauma they got in the department. And I'm thinking, well, why would I want to convince someone to join this trauma? So now I'm asking you the question, as the department, what can you guys do to create an environment in which this trauma can't even exist, right? Like, we should be able to go to law enforcement and say, you know what, if there is racism in your department, you need to eliminate it, and this is how you need to do it, right? And so if we for black and brown bodies, law enforcement become attractive again, right?
Right.
And so, but you got officers right now who's physically hurt, who are mentally hurt, because of the job, and not even the, because they have to do the same thing everybody else has to do on the job. They got to go through all of the dangers as the job that has. But in addition to that, they also got to deal with the mental anguish and the issues that that this white supremacy structure surrounds them with. Right. So I said to the brother, I'm like, listen, I don't want to even talk about if you're racist or not, or if your department racist. I just want to know what your guys are doing to eliminate white supremacy in the culture, because we know it's there, and if as long as it's there, racism is going to be a part of it.
Right.
And so that's what we have to get to.
No, I think that's honest. And you said, if racism is a disease, America has used malpractice to treat it. Damn!
Wow.
I was like, man, I wish I made that one up. That's David K. Jones.
That's a hip hop quotable. Yeah.
Well, I tell you right now, man, you gonna find some good one. Now, there's a part in this piece. So I was talking to sister out of St. Louis. She just bought the book. The book just arrived, and we were talking about some police and stuff. And like the book literally just got to her desk. She's like, oh, she just opens like this. Now you crack a book open, and it falls on probably one of the most deepest poems that I wrote in that book, right? And it talks about it's called what's the title of the book? I forget what it's called now, but it's called They Call Me. And I don't know if I can say this on this show or not, but
yes, you can.
I can say, okay, it's called They Called Me Nigger, right? And it's probably one of the most. So when I wrote that piece, and I wrote this piece, and I wrote it in a way that connects each line. So as you read this, you literally see the connections throughout the whole thing.
Right.
And the way I wrote this piece is, what are we allowed this world to do to us in order to fit in, right? So they call me this word because maybe they forgot my name, right? Or they want me to be part of their portrait. They want me to put, if you want to reference it, it's on page 60, right? Yeah, page 60. So it's probably one of the most craziest things I've written in regards to looking at how we have accepted this trauma in order to be part of the culture, right? To be a part of this mass culture. We are willing to be called out of our name, put out of our minds, our consciousness, to be a part of something that, as I described in a book, I feel like we're looking in this bubble, and we got to make a decision. Did we go through the bubble or did we go around the bubble, right? And either way you look at it, David, it causes us a sort of this sick mind. My own dad, though I sent him a copy, he's still trying to get through the title. He was like, just the title. Right? And I was like, Dad, you got to get past the title. You got to get past the title because the one thing that I did, and this is another part too. It gets a little bit more hopeful towards the end, and I there's a part that calls "I Fight for My People." That's the third chapter, and I fight for my people. It all came because I was in Alabama, and I ran into this Black Marine, and we were having this conversation. He was telling me about his grandfather who also fought for our country, and how his grandfather got back to the U.S. and had to go through Jim Crow and discrimination, and then I asked what I call is probably one of the most disrespectful questions I could think of at that time, and I just blurted it out. I was like, "So your grandfather went through that, and then you decided to go fight for this country? Like, why?"
Right.
And he said, "Because I fight for my people." And I was like, "Whoa, that's the title of my chapter right there. I fight for my people." But when I wrote that, I was thinking and Damon, this goes back to when you and I first met. We were sitting at that we were having. This is back in the day when you.
Yeah, I just read the poem. This is.
Yeah. So I tell you right now, I was with Damon the first time, and it was a long day. I forgot it was like a press conference.
Oh yeah,
right. First time. Yeah. First time I met your wife, I didn't know your wife at the time. I saw selling her wings. By the way, I haven't eaten meat since October because of your book. By the way, but but there was a time when we were just chilling, and I was like, man, you look exhausted. And then because you're doing everything right. You're just doing all this stuff. Like, man, you look tired. And part of this thing I realized is for those like yourself and AJ and whoever who's constantly trying to bring that Black consciousness to our community, trying to make sure that we have true justice. I realized something. I said, one, we fight for our people, but those who are fighters, we gotta accept who we are. We are folks who have agreed to take on a sick mind, a strained body, and a weary spirit to fight for our people, right? So when someone says to me, Terry, where do you find the time? Where do you find the time to do this work? I'm like, I don't have a choice,
right?
I don't got a choice. I already accepted those three things. I accepted, I accepted the sick mind, I accepted the tired body, and the weary spirit, and I understand why I'm doing that work. And I got to the point where, and again, this is also in a book where I said I can't afford to be tired. I don't have that luxury. Tiredness is a luxury, right? That's a luxury. To say that I'm because our ancestors was able to say I'm tired. Like how they could say, what, Master, I'm tired today. It ain't happening. So like to us, who are we to take tiredness as our weak point? Right. And so I think the whole part of this whole book is to not just to look at how do we re-examine how do we look at in these deconstructing racism and white supremacy, but it's also how do we gather our strength to make sure that we are able to leave to the next generation, right, a better future, right, but where their sickness is not repeated over and over again. Because that's what's happening. The show last week, when and AJ, you talked about the young lady that was stabbed in the school, and then you showed a video of the mother who has said, I remember back then, right, where this violence was taking place. You're looking at generational trauma happen over and over again. Right. I had a family on my show, and I had mother and grandmother on the show. And then I had a picture that was drawn by the daughter, and the son was killed, right? And I'm looking at 3 generations of trauma right there. Right. This is in that one snapshot on that show. And I'm thinking we are just passing on trauma. And again, because we're not willing to take the necessary steps, because we're not willing to do what is, as I call, we're not willing to crawl, walk or run towards racism.
Right.
We just pass on the trauma with no sense of healing. So that's what you said. When people say it's time to heal, I'm like, if they say it's time to heal, but they haven't acknowledged that trauma yet, then you're right, David. Someone done took a hand out already. And,
exactly. But we don't talk about, like, we don't, as Black people, like, we don't acknowledge it. Like, we don't acknowledge the generational trauma of what white supremacy has done to Black communities, right?
Mm-hmm.
To the point, at this point, right, we are the co-conspirators.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
yep.
You know, we've become the co-conspirators because we're so traumatized and we're so beaten up by white supremacy, right? We're
Mm-hmm.
beating up ourselves, you know, because we lost, because we haven't healed. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like you can't, when a system separates family, you know, how do you pass on family values when there's no family?
Right.
How do you do that? How do you do that? Right.
Right.
You can't, and then we wonder why, right? Then we wonder why the institution of marriage is lower than it was, you know, in the 50s, 40s, 20s, and probably lower than it was in slavery. You understand? We had more family values and more family units in slavery than we do now in this quote unquote era of wokeness.
Yeah. Oh, I tell you right now, if you want to talk about wokeness, there's the first piece of this book. I dive right into that right away, and I'll tell you the exact page on it by the way. So it's on page 2, not even that far, right? I said in the hit, what good is a conscience that proclaims it is woke when its capitalized ideologies leaves you morally broke? Now, when I let's for a second, let's process that for a second. You know, I love this you know, when we talk about wokeness in this society, we get this all the time. Like, I'm woke. I'm like, sometimes you might need to go back to sleep because your wokeness is causing you more trauma right now. And you and a part about this too is, you had a good point there, Damon. Is about, you know, when we look at the family structure and family values, we start to I'll tell you the story. My grandmother, God bless her soul. You know, I love my grandma dearly. She passed away back in 2018, I believe. And before when she was alive, she had this picture of white Jesus, right? You know, I think most Black families have the picture of white Jesus, you know,
exactly.
And that's normal. Now, wasn't so normal is that she would literally have us talk to this page, and like, you know, you gotta like respect you gotta respect the white Jesus on the wall, right? And as a person, I was like, you know, I didn't even get a conversation with her about, you know, the good times conversation, you know, the episode of Good Times. I didn't rehash that one. But I remember thinking to myself is, wow, what a mindset to have, right? You know, I'm not gonna get into the whole, you know, who that picture is depicting. I wasn't going to get into that. But I was thinking, what a mindset to have. And then when I started thinking about white supremacy in this book, that's one of the images that came to my mind. And the fact of the matter is that when we start looking at how we start doing things in our lives, we realize that we have fallen to this sickness further than we actually acknowledge, right? When someone talks to me about Black on Black crime, I always say, yeah, that's white supremacy. And then someone would say, how can Black on Black crime be white supremacy? I says, easy, because the same idea that will put in same fear that's put in a white person's mind to fear a Black body. What make you think that same fear can be put into a Black mind, right? We have there's a study that was done back in the 60s, 70s, and it was redone back in 2010, where they would have a white doll and a black doll, right?
Right. Yes.
As these little kids, right? Who's the ugly doll? Who's the good doll? The bad doll? And time again, no matter what the skin color of the child was, they would choose a white doll as a good doll, as the pretty doll, and then the black doll as the bad doll and the other doll. Now we're talking about pieces of plastic, and we're talking about young kids, right? And they would ask the black kid which doll best looks like you. Now they'll choose that black doll, and they already committed that black doll to being bad and ugly, and they choose that black doll to represent them. They're kids, right? And if there's enough toxic in our world to poison these young minds, to have them choose the color of these dolls as good and bad based on their skin color, how much poison do you think we have in our brains as adults? Right. Exactly. Right. You know, I said this before too. I was like, you know, when you look at some of the you know, we talk a lot about the crime bill that was passed, but you remember it were black folks who were pushing for that crime bill.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Right. Absolutely. They were pushing for that crime bill, and the reason was because we were allowed to be fair of one another. We were allowed that fear to sink in, and we became fearful of what the Clinton calls the super predators, right? And I even put this in my book at one point. I remember growing up in that era, and we would hear folks talk about, you know, the black youth being the lost youth, and I would say, well, we are black, right? If I'm lost, you're lost, we're lost, right? And so in this mindset, I really, and again, it's going back to this retraining that brain. As we're retraining America, we got to retrain ourselves. Right. We have to retrain ourselves to say, what is it? And here's a question. This is the one question I always say to folks who are watching: is every thought that you have, every action that you take, if you can take a minute to say, where is that coming from? Through which lens, right? Is it coming through the lens of black liberation, or is it coming through the lens of white supremacy? And I would tell you right now, most of our thoughts are coming through the lens of white supremacy, because that is what we have grown up. That's what's been taught in our schools. That's what's on our TV. That's what's in our papers. And that's why stuff like Black Westchester newspaper is so important, because it gives the voice. And again, I'll have my screen up right now, but back then we talk about some of the black newspapers back in the 1800s and the early 1900s. That's how I found out about Moses P. Cobb and Samuel J. Battle, right? Is those black papers, because they were publishing, hey, we're going to follow what's happening with these two brothers in New York City, right? In the white papers, and I have both of them, they were like, you know, they were just talking about their physical appearance. They weren't talking about their lives, right? And so I think when we talk about, you know, when we look at media, when you look at, you know, the paper, whatever it is, we've just been getting that information through our whole lives. And so as those little kids who's choosing the white doll over the black doll, as adults, we are doing the same exact thing. So the question that we need to ask ourselves is, every time we think about something, every time we have a thought or an action that we want to take on, which lens are we coming from? So
I want to give you a chance. Where can people buy the book? How can people follow you? Social media, all of that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So you can buy the book on any platform that you choose. It is everywhere. It's, you know, Amazon, Barnes and Noble. I even saw it on Google Play and even on Walmart.com. Like, if you just Google "Welcome to the Sick Mind of the Same Person," wherever you got your points at, use your points to buy the book.
Yeah, I got mine with my Amazon Prime. My Amazon Prime, it came the next day. Yeah.
One of my colleagues said that she was saving up her points on Barnes and Noble for like 5 years, and she just spent it on my book. I was like, I appreciate that. You know, so it's everywhere. And you know, you follow me on Twitter. You know, I got 2 Twitter accounts. I don't even know what the names are, but I'll send it to you as well.
Yes.
But definitely, Strategies for Justice is the other platform where you can find me. And, you know, one of the things I want people to really get from the book is, you know, one of our folks who are reading the book said, you know, she had to put it down a couple of times after reading it, because she had to self-reflect on something that she just read, right? And you hopefully people get that throughout the book, right? You go to read it and you say, man, let me think about that for a second. And that's exactly what this book is meant to do, because it's taking you through my mind as it. But like I said in the book, I am not that naive to believe only my mind is sick. So, so brother,
and and we didn't have enough time. We got to go. But one thing that you wrote that your son said to you, which was very powerful. If I'm capable, why should I be likable? And I was like, wow! I just threw the book down, right? I was like, I just threw the book. I'm like, that's what I'm talking about, right? Capable. I don't care if I'm likable. I'm capable of doing the job. And for a young man to really see that, man, was beautiful, bro. Was beautiful.
I want to definitely invite you back to continue not just the conversation about your book, but these conversations. I want to also, as the editor-in-chief, anytime you just want to write something for the paper or something like that, we definitely welcome, because we need more of that for our community to read. And we definitely have you come back as we talk about other topics that are covered in here, and have you come on as an expert. Definitely, my brother. I appreciate you.
Well, thank you for having me, and this has been fantastic. I love watching this from Pennsylvania. So keep it going, and as you both know, I'm a huge fan.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you.
All right.
And as you see, as soon as I got I got my book. Now, I haven't broke into it yet, but I got it. I'm taking some time off around Memorial Day, and I'm definitely taking it with me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both. Thank you so much.
Thank you, brother.
Yes.
Soon, man.
All right, see ya.
And we're about to get into our next guest after. So welcome. You tuned into Black Westchester, People Before Politics radio show. We had some guests and canceled, and I've been bogged down. We just had a menthol ban town hall this past Friday, and working on the book and working on my new book. So I decided I was just going to air some very important interviews that we did for people that missed it the first time. This was done back in April 2021. I can tell from some of the comments and text messages that I just got a lot of people didn't see it. So I wanted to make sure we saw that. We're definitely going to have that brother back on. Very important voice, Terry Watson. The book is Welcome to the Sick Mind of a Sane Person, Deconstructing Racism and White Supremacy. It's on Amazon. Everybody who hears my voice, I that's doing this work should definitely pick up that book and read it. The next interview. Before I get into the next interview, so I wrote an article last week, and I don't know when the last time this has happened, but the New York Giants, the New York Jets, and the Buffalo Bills all won on the same week. And apparently, same thing happened today. So for 2 weeks in a row. So I'm working on that. That'll be up to later tonight. The second week in a row, it's been a good day in New York for football. All three football teams have won. And this is also the third week of the season. Both the Giants and the Jets won. But back-to-back weekends, the New York Giants, the New York Jets, and the Buffalo Bills won. I think that just deserves a little. I had to bring that up. So the next interview we did that I wanted to share for the second half of the show was Tajian Nelson when she got appointed as head of the Board of Elections right after the passing of Reginald Lafayette. She came on and had a great conversation, and I'm going to share that with you now. But while she was alive, she always told me, give me my flowers while I am alive to smell them. You know what I'm saying? Women's history, traditionally, we celebrate women from the past who have done great things, and we need to always continue to keep their name alive. But starting last year, I thought it was as important to celebrate the women now doing things. We don't have to wait for them to be history, to celebrate them. So I'm giving, this is my giving women their flowers. And our next guest is Tajian Nelson. Did I say your first name right? Did I say your first?
Perfect.
There you go. There you go. You know, I was sitting there like, boy, I'm gonna mess up her name. She's gonna look at me like, AJ, you done messed up my name.
You definitely get a clap, because a lot of people, boy, you don't know how that's been pronounced.
Well, when I had it written out, people were like, how do you pronounce it? And then I was trying to do, you know how they do in the dictionary when they show you the diction, and I couldn't think of the phonetic for it to explain it to somebody. So
well, my mother, she found that name years ago, and it's actually Tajian Monet. She was in love with French names, so she found that years ago in a book. We never quite found the book, but that's the story. So that's why I don't hear it a lot.
Is there a story of what the meaning of the name? Is there a story with the meaning of, or do you know?
Just that she loved the name. She loved names, and she didn't like any normal kind of names for her kids. She kind of throw a little bit of different, like she didn't want it to sound like every other name that you heard around the block at the time. Right. So yeah, I definitely never heard it growing up, but I know there are a couple of different Tajians around now. I've never met one though, but in the voter rolls and around Mount Vernon, I've heard there are some others, girls and guys between Mount Vernon and Rochelle. So maybe one day I'll meet them.
Well, let me just say this. So, you know, we started Black Westchester in 2014. Most people know this story. Actually, I have a book in June coming out talking about the whole story. So that people always ask me the story. Is Black Westchester, the origin story. So it's coming out in June. But I was in Atlanta for 10 to 12 years before I came back home, take care of my mom. She had stage 4 cancer, you know, and Damon brought that idea to me. So as needless to say, you know, before that, I was in the music business. So I wasn't really big in politics. I wasn't really involved in politics. I tell people, and they laugh because they don't believe me, you know, my only involvement in politics, I voted for Bill Clinton twice, and I voted for Obama twice. Like, that was my entire, as far as politics. I can't even tell you I voted in every presidential election. Those 4 times is the only time I ever voted. I didn't know what a councilman was, an assembly. I didn't even care. I was just about trying to get my paper, like a lot of people. So I understand that mentality, and I try to educate them now. But as I was going through, you know, you start meeting certain people, and you start hearing of certain people, and your name, even though I hadn't met you for years, the first time I heard your name, it stuck out. Like I always remembered your name. I didn't know you. I felt like I know you because, you know, you've been putting in work for so long that a lot of people big you up. So I've always heard your name. But it was just like, once I heard it, I knew it. You know, I hadn't seen you. I didn't know what you looked like, but I knew your name though. Your name, it stayed with me from day one.
Got it. Thank you. Well, just similar to you, before I started, I wasn't really involved in politics. I mean, my family voted, but they weren't, you know, they weren't activists. They weren't like overly involved, you know, stuff like that. So coming into it, it's been 18 years now. I started in 2004. With Commissioner Lafayette, as you know, Reggie, and at the Board of Elections. And I came actually from being a management assistant at the Galleria Mall. Wow. Time. And then I came to the Board of Elections, and his assistant was retiring. And he decided he would give me kind of like a chance, like a test. Right. And I started in March 15th. So actually the other day I made 18 years there at the Board of Elections.
Wow. And
at the time he was commissioner, and he was still chairman of the Mount Vernon Democratic City Committee at the time. Because some of you may not know, he was, then he wasn't, then he was again. So it was kind of like he got drafted back into it. And then slowly but surely he drafted me into every other part of his life. And that's how I became the county Democratic secretary, and just becoming involved in the Westchester Young Democrats. I was a former president of that too. Like you said, you heard my name a lot around the place. And then I became the corresponding secretary to Mount Vernon Dems. And then now I am the executive board as financial secretary of the Westchester Black Women's Political Caucus. So I get to have a lot of fun. And I'm co-vice president of my parent teacher committee, my son's school. So I wear a lot of hats, and then I was his executive assistant for, like I said, pretty much this would have been 18 years. And I served in different roles at the Board of Elections, starting, like I said, from like a clerk to then becoming his executive assistant. And then I gained various promotions and upgrades throughout the years, eventually becoming the acting deputy, and then the deputy commissioner. And then now I'm commissioner. I'm the first Black female election commissioner of the Westchester County Board of Elections. So it's been quite a journey. And literally that's been now 12 days and counting. So,
and I don't know if you saw last week's show.
I did watch it.
So Bobby had several members of the Westchester Black Women's Political Caucus on, and we were highlighting some of them. And then, we had everybody basically, saying who we wanted to give flowers to. And I was highlighting you, and I don't know what I said last week was, I'm very big on not voting for, and I think our people have to be, their due diligence. We shouldn't vote for somebody just because they're Black. We shouldn't vote for somebody just because they're a woman or whatever, And with that saying, you becoming the next commissioner, you are more than qualified. And I wanted that to be, you know what I'm saying? Like, I wanted to make that distinction. Some people just, they get it because they know somebody. Like, you just, and it's funny because while I planned on saying this, in your last, you just spelled out why you're qualified. Like, you just, before I can even bring it up, you didn't just spelled it all out. You did the work. Like, I mean, and that's very important. I mean, for people to know that, because we don't have, sometimes in our voting and our selecting of people, we think with our heart and with emotions, but we don't always think of the best qualified person. And I'm really proud to see you in that position. From the things that I know about you, again, I don't know you personally. We've only met once or twice, maybe, but I've always known your name, and you've come up the rank, and I think that's very important. And I hope you go on, to have that position for a while. And I look forward to see, how things change in the work that you do under your leadership.
Thank you so much. Honestly, I appreciate that. And like I've said, like I told people, I didn't start, a lot of people, because the Board of Elections is a partisan position, and one half is Democrat and one half is Republican. They just see a lot of us just as like politicians and where you come from and who you know, and people don't really get that. A lot of us work really hard, as they say, started from the bottom and now I'm here.
Right.
So I've worked really hard, whether it's at the Board of Elections and whether I've been at 25 Grover Street in White Plains or at the Ardsley warehouse packing the bags or helping to put the books together that go in the voting bags on election day, and just assisting and being like just a liaison, and just kind of like that that kind of link to the Board of Elections through Reggie, and just voting and now politics and things like that. So it truly is a blessing. And I thank God every day, as well as I appreciate the fact that, a man who didn't have to take a chance on me 18 years ago, he did. And I more than worked hard and proved that I was deserving of that faith that he put in me. And he made sure to teach me all about, politics and ethics and conviction and staying true to yourself and just remembering who you are, and my family also instilled that strong strength in me just to always, like I said, hold true to your values. And if you work hard, that work hard should be rewarded. And I feel like I'm a really true example that working hard, eventually you'll get your due. And I've honestly just been beyond humbled and honored these last few weeks and just throughout the years for the love and support that I've received throughout the county, the state, the city of Mount Vernon, before now, and particularly in the sudden untimely passing of Reggie. Obviously, many may not know he was going to retire at the end of this year finally, which didn't even seem possible. And I was planning to go for the position at that time. And you know what they say, right? We make plans and God laughs, and some things happen. And sometimes you just things happen and you just step right in and you do what you have to do. And that's what I'm continue to do. And I hope that people will continue to support me and continue to see who Tajian Nelson is, not just Reggie Lafayette's executive assistant or the acting deputy, but just who I'm going to be as a leader and a strong force going forward in the Board of Elections and in politics. So I look forward to showing everyone that.
A couple of things real quick. So I saw Reggie at the Maggie's. I think it was the Democratic. It was the launch for the Democratic ticket going into the general election.
Right.
And as I'm going to get me some salad or whatever, Reggie walks up to me and say, "You're going to get your wish." And I'm like, "What's my wish?" "You're going to get your wish. I'm retiring." I said, "Reggie, you've been retiring for the 8 years we've been doing Black Westchester." Making me laugh, But I want to say, I what we did. So I did the issue when I heard about his passing. I was done with the issue. Was going to the printer the next day. And then we got the message that he had died.
Wow.
And I basically redid the whole structure to cover the issue and everything. And, again, with that whole giving people their flowers while they're alive, I had quotes from a lot of big people and all that stuff. I would love to have been able to do that at his retirement. Absolutely. So that he could hear all these things and see what we, you know what I'm saying? That Like that would have been, because a lot of people thought we were enemies and we hated each other. I want to say, even when I was adversarial, and I say I was adversarial, in court cases, he'd be like, "This is your first time covering a court case like this year." He said, "Listen for this. You're going to hear this, this, and this." And he would break it down. And he was like, and he was a wealth of knowledge.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? So I would always pick his brain.
Right.
And he would always talk to me. Now, he didn't come on the show a lot. He didn't talk to me on the record a lot, but we talked a lot, like when we saw each other. And I always said, he verbally sparred with the best of them. Like he verbally sparred with the best of them. But what I wanted to say, as far as where you're concerned, one of my biggest complaints, again, and I'm using an example, not calling the individual out. So in 2015, I had a problem when Ernie Davis said the reason he was running is because there was no one qualified to take his place. And I felt immediately, if you've been the mayor for 16, now me and Ernie are cool. I'm not picking on Ernie. I'm just using him as an example. I've had this conversation with Ernie, so he knows. So I'm not talking about it behind his back. So,
don't worry, I'm run tell that, but this is live.
No, everyone's going. Every time I mention, he'll hear about it, and then when I see him at WVOX, our show is after him. He'll talk. But what I felt at that time was, if you had been a mayor over 16 years, over a 20-year period, and you felt nobody was qualified to take your place, that it might be. What I challenged him, it might be an indictment on your leadership and not the people. Right. And what I say, I use that as an example to say, one of my biggest gripes, I felt Maureen ran one time too many instead of putting her support behind her deputy. And that might have saved us some of the problems with the whole Deborah Reynolds thing. But anyway, that's but she ran one time.
A whole nother radio show.
Right. But a lot of times our leaders, when they have been there so long, they don't always leaders create other leaders.
Right.
And that's the difference between a leader and a boss. You know what I'm saying? But leaders create leaders
for the next generation.
Right. And I've been critical of some of our elders who did not groom and who did not mentor other people. And I say that to say, like Denzel said in the interview, to make a long story longer, it's easy to see how Reggie poured into you. Like, he didn't expect to die. He expected to retire at a certain point or whatever, but it didn't happen that way. But because he had poured into you over those years, you were ready to step up into the position. I think that's very important. And I think we all need to pay that forward. Like I try to, anybody who wants to get into writing, I try to bring them in, because they're going to be the future of whatever this is. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm 56. I'm not going to be doing this for, the rest of my,
right. He absolutely did that. So despite what a lot of people believe, that he wasn't, grooming or trying to get people, to take over, he definitely did that with me. And he definitely shared his knowledge and tried to groom and basically challenge us to step up, whether it be for me at the Board of Elections, or chairwoman, the current chairwoman of the Mount Vernon City Democratic Committee, Mary Graves, who I know you may know as well, who was the first vice chair. And they'd worked together for years too. So he was definitely, like I said, getting ready, and he wanted us to step up and, just show everything that we learned from him, but also just to lead in our own right, as we, definitely didn't always see the vision the same, but always the ultimate goal. So
right. And I just think that, and I wanted to uplift that because, again, like I said, I've been very critical of our leaders who have not passed that torch, who have not mentored. Now, don't get me wrong. Sometimes we reach out to the youth because it happens with me. And they just don't want to be mentored. Like, they just don't want to listen. And they, I had a few people that came up. They wanted to do what we do. I poured a lot into them. They wanted to go do something else. Like, their way, not so.
Well, they want, I say it now, I often say sometimes some of the youth, not all, because I'm not going to put them all in the same category. They want gratification, and they don't think that they don't want to build. They just want to be at the top, and they don't want to learn anything. And sometimes they don't give credit where credit is due to our elders, because I always was raised to respect and just basically appreciate the knowledge of your elders. Not always that you would agree or see it that way. You definitely want to change, but there's a lot to be learned and a lot to teach and just a lot to go on and just share and expand on what they started and where we're eventually going. And there's always expansion to be done, and we all need to learn every day. We're all learning about each other and about whether it's elections or politics or life. And I mean, just, look at the world today. You know what I'm saying? And if we can't help teach each other, share our knowledge, and just be more embracing of each other and our differences, knowing that we don't always have to see eye to eye, but just being able to listen and then expound and then hopefully meet somewhere in the middle to coordinate, to build to the future, then we're just going to stay stuck. And, I hope that doesn't happen. And I do my best to ensure that doesn't happen, whether it's with my sons or my nieces and my nephews and just other people who I work with in politics and things like that. And I always just tell them, like, don't take anything for granted. And definitely remember, you got to start somewhere. So,
you're saying, remind me, the first thing Reggie ever taught me, and he told me to remember this. I don't remember anything else. There are no permanent friends, no permanent enemies in politics, only permanent interests. Right. So, he actually told me that, and that's when I was being very critical of Ernie at the time. Me and Ernie have been cool since then. And, the party basically wasn't really feeling me because we were holding people to the fire.
Sometimes there's rocky beginnings, we all have each other, and sometimes everyone's perspective. Like, I think sometimes the problem that we experience, whether it's in politics or, even relative to anything, is just that sometimes people take word of mouth without really introducing themselves and really getting to know a person, because who a person is or what their public image is or who they appear to be or what people have built them up to be is not always who they are. And I think you can attest to that, because for a lot of things that you saw in the news or how he might have been portrayed when you were sitting in Maggie's or the AC or the lodge or wherever you might have ran into him at, and for those quiet places, you just know that he was just a genuine Southern gentleman who worked hard and always just wanted the best for the people in his city and the county. And that's what he really embraced, and he really wanted people to really just see that. Someone said it best. I think one of the quotes someone said is, he said, "Let the work speak for me." Let the work speak for itself. So, whether you agreed with them, disagreed with them, loved them, hated them, and let's not, we don't want to pretend, because people like to say, oh, when someone's gone, oh, they were just all this and everyone loved them. Well, we all know that wasn't the case, because nobody loves everybody. But, he was a great gentleman. He was honest, and ultimately he really wanted the best, and he wanted to move us all forward, as Black people, and to ensure that everything we were reflective and represented in all parts of, whether it was government or the politics, the judiciary. And, that's a legacy that, we all should hope to just, eventually someday emulate, and in our own right. So,
it was important for Damon and I, while we did celebrate his life, not try to rewrite history. I talked about, me and him, going back and forth and verbally sparring. And,
Okay.
we talked about, because that was part of our relationship. You know what I'm saying? But, like, I got to know him and appreciate him through that, though. I got to learn a lot through that, though. And talking about learning, we always try to teach, use the show as a teaching moment, because civics is definitely something that we lack in our community. So I want you to break down for the people, what exactly is the Board of Elections? What does it do? What is the purpose of it? I mean, because when I see people complain about certain things, they complain about things as a party thing, not a Board of Election thing.
Right, yeah.
And then some people are complaining about a Board of Election thing, but they're complaining at the party, so I want to,
Right, okay. Okay, well, the Board of Elections, like I said, is a bipartisan board where people can come to register to vote, change their address, and then we're responsible for the conduct of elections, conducting fair and open elections and ensuring that no voters are disenfranchised throughout the county. So pretty much just to start now, some of you may not be aware that 16 and 17-year-olds can pre-register to vote, which is great because now you don't have to jump on your kid when they're 18. You can jump on them when they're 16 and say, hey, go fill out this form. And the minute you turn 18, you have the right to vote. We are responsible for opening up the polls, administering the polls, recruiting the election workers at the polls, ensuring that we have accessible polling sites that are open, that where there's available parking, easy transportation, easy access, and handicap accessibility. Then after those elections are done, on election, we open up the polls at 5 a.m. We close the polls at 9 p.m. However, we are generally working to close and ensure we get all those results by usually way into the wee hours of the morning. Literally, I can get home at 3 a.m. on election night. After that, after the polls are closed, we then calculate and tabulate all the election results, including the results that were from the voting machines, as well as if you chose to vote by mail and use your absentee ballot, or if for some reason you weren't in the election book or you moved and you weren't able to vote on the machine, you'll use an affidavit ballot, which can also be using to change your address or updating some other voter information that you have. After that, we're responsible for certifying those results. And then that is how we determine who are the winner of those elections. And ultimately, those become your elected officials. And then we send them out a certificate. Sometimes, as you know, those elections don't go as smoothly as we want. So there are extensive court cases where we have to review all the ballots. And now we have the fun of if an election is certified and the winner has won by 20 votes or less, then we have to do a manual recount. And I'm sure you all heard that for the seat, one of the last seats last year for the Mount Vernon City Council race, we had to do a manual recount. So therefore, we had to go back, and our bipartisan team of Democratic and Republican staff members had to literally hand count every single ballot, paper ballot, to confirm the election results. And the only results that slightly changed were some ballots that may not have been read originally by the machines. Let's see, what else did we do at the Board of Elections? Oh, before you can get on the ballot, you have to run what we call petitions. And the Board of Elections helps kind of give candidates information in regards to running, the sample forms that are needed. We tell them how many signatures were required, the dates those need to be filed. If anyone wants to object to those petitions, we give them directions on how to do that. They're able to do that. We review the petitions and determine if they're valid or not. If there's more than one candidate for an election office, let's say if there's one assembly seat, and then there's two candidates, if those petitions are declared valid, there'll be what there's called a primary election, and that is now held in June. And this year, the primary election will be June 28th. And we already know that we're probably going to have some primaries locally, and then in our state offices, as we have a lot of Democratic and other party candidates running throughout the county and the state of New York. So you should plan to go to the polls, whether it be on election day or for early voting, which is 9 days before that. And early voting is where you can go to any of the 23 election sites in the county of Westchester and cast your ballot, so you wouldn't have to wait all the way until June 28th to begin to vote. And that kind of sums up what the Board of Elections does. And if anyone's ever interested in having us come visit, whether it be their school or their organization or getting on any forums, I've been on the NAACP and Peekskill last year to explain voting and any questions relative to that, then I'm always open to do that. So that's a little summary of what we do at the Board of Elections. And despite what people think, we are open all year round.
I think that's very important, and I think we need to, I'm gonna make sure when I edit the video, I'm gonna edit your part of the interview, just so people can watch just that. And I want to share that. I wanted to get that out there because we need to share that. And I worked with, I hadn't really worked with campaigns, and I worked with Richard Thomas' campaign in 2015, and I learned a lot. But what good and bad. But what I learned, like how many people really don't know. Like they don't really know their rights. They don't know what they can do. Those fellas didn't know they could vote if they were off probation. You know what I'm saying? Like there was just people that I had registered 205 people that year, and it was just like people were like, "Oh, I can't register because I got a felon," and I'm like, they didn't know that you, unlike states like Florida where you need a governor pardon, like the only way you can vote, like you can vote, and now I think they can vote. Even now they can vote even if they're on probation, I believe. Felonies.
We've definitely, they've expanded the rules to ensure that more people still have their right to vote and it's not taken away from them while they're serving their time or figuring out any kind of those those charges, we'll just say. I think that's definitely great. We definitely have put that new information on our website. It's reflective on the new voter form. If anyone has any questions about that or, wants me to come and explain that a little bit more, I can get the full information on that on a future show as we get closer, maybe to primary time and stuff like that. We can come, if you like, we can come talk again about that and how to vote and stuff like that. So you just let me know.
No, absolutely. And the danger of not teaching civics. So we're not teaching our youth civics, and our youth become adults and they don't know, so they can't teach their kids. And we have generations of people that really, it's not just the youth that don't understand. There's a lot of adults that don't know because no one taught them. You know what I'm saying? And we have to do a better job in our community with teaching our people civics. Whether it should be taught in school, whether it should, I don't know how we work it out. I'm definitely down to be part of whatever process that is to help putting it together. But I've been championing, we need to teach civics. We need civic training and I mean from our seniors down to our youth. I mean all the way around, and I try to get information. I try to get information from people every time we do one of these, and hopefully someone, even if they're not watching live, they can watch this video later, and someone will learn something that they didn't know. So
that's always great. I think if we can teach something and something that we do every day, then we definitely accomplish something. And, I'm always definitely eager to be a part of that process, particularly where elections are related, because you're right. A lot of people have no idea. Like I said, they think we're not open all year round. They think we just open up right before election day, which wouldn't be possible because you have to maintain the voter database. So if people are registering every day, whether in person or through the mail or at the DMV, electronically, then obviously someone has to be there to maintain those records and check them and confirm that they're all up to date. So
here's an interesting question that came to me when you was talking earlier, and I forgot now, I just remembered. So we saw what happened on the national level with the storming of the Capitol to stop the election, to not certify, the new election, the new president as the winner. And, even though Westchester is a heavily Democratic, has somewhat dominance, in the county, it just made me wonder. And now that I have you on, I can ask you, because I've never got a chance to ask Reggie, do we have things in place locally and countywide to stop something from that. Because like when you see things, and all politics are local, we have some local people from Westchester there. You know what I'm saying? And this mood is going around the country. So let's not be fooled that it can't happen here. Like,
no, I think that after all of that, all the county elements, the county executive, the legislators, and things like that, there were things kind of reviewed in case there was a hostile sort of riot, takeover, sort of like January 6th that occurred with the, we'll call it the Trump revolution. Right, in order to not certify the election results. I know, like I said, everyone was 100% on guard. They raised all the alarms, and I'm sure that, I've been shared, obviously, again, as we get probably back into a presidential race very shortly, which seems crazy, right? Because we're already talking about the next presidential race. I'm sure that there'll be a lot of meetings in regards to discuss contingency plans and things relative to any sort of violence erupting here locally. We'll obviously share that as we get closer in regards to how that may obviously be handled. But that is definitely talks behind the scenes, and we're all very aware that anything that happened nationally can definitely happen here. And that's why we're all on guard in regards to our cyber and our internet, right, security and stuff with everything going on and Russia and Ukraine and that war that's breaking out that is definitely affecting us here and hopefully won't further affect us to where we have to fully get involved and end up, in World War III, basically.
I'm glad you said that, and the reason I asked, and it wasn't just the presidential. I mean, they started storming governor mansions, and like it started being local. You know what I'm saying? So it's just like, wow, the Democrats kind of have a little dominance right now. That I always tell people, don't think it can't happen. And
no, absolutely not.
We gotta be prepared.
Yes, and like I said, I would rest assured that, like I said, from the governor on down to our senators, Majority Leader Andrew Stewart Cousins, and in the assembly, I'm sure that they all are working on like some contingency plans going forward, because obviously that's something we hadn't seen before, and once it happens once, we know it can happen again. So I'm sure that they're really prepping themselves for any sort of antics that occur in that respect, and hopefully we won't have to experience that or defend ourselves against that, but I'm sure we'll be definitely prepared.
And I say this not to alarm people, but it makes people uncomfortable. When you see things like that, sometimes that's a trial run for the real thing. Like in 9/11, before 9/11, with 93, they tried a van or something in the garage area or whatever. It didn't work. Then I think they tried something else and that didn't work, and then they tried the plane thing. Like, yeah. While those people, they saw what worked and what didn't work, and I'm sure they're adjusting, and we need to be alert. Like it's not over. Like, you know what I'm saying? So
yes, you're 100% accurate. We have to, as they stay woke. We have to stay woke at all times, because you just don't know what's coming down the pike, and we're absolutely definitely in some kind of revolution, and we have to be prepared in order to defend our democracy and our voting rights and our elections. And we're all going to do our best to do that. Like I said, stay woke, make sure your cybersecurity and internet security is up and no one's trying to hack you or do anything.
No, we had a nasty hack a few months ago.
Okay.
We were down for over a week, and we had to invest in a more powerful security package.
Yes.
Yeah, we were. Yeah, somebody hit us with like 1 billion pieces of malware is the best way I can. Yes. So they overwhelmed the system so much that the server had to disconnect us from the server, or was going to take down the server.
Take down everything. Yeah. So
So we had to go through all kinds of cleaning and all kinds. Yeah, that actually happened within the last 4 months or so. Yeah.
And you're not the only organization or group that's happening to, and I think that is the time encouraging and forcing all of us to increase our security levels to the highest, which obviously is going to help these security companies, because we're going to pay them a lot of money to ensure that we're protected, but it's absolutely an investment that's needed, that we'll definitely need to ensure going forward. So we got to stay woke, stay alert, and stay active to ensure all of our rights going forward.
So bringing it back locally somewhat. So this year, the major thing is our state races. Is that correct? Our state Senate, our Assembly,
our Congress,
our Congress, and our U.S. senators. Yeah. So I want people to be, it is very important to pay attention to who, like, we don't always pay attention to who the congressman is. Correct. And we don't understand why our congressman is important locally. Like, we don't understand, like, they go to they go up there to represent us locally. And we don't understand.
Yeah. Like I said, this year is about the governor's race, the lieutenant governor, the attorney general. Then we go into our congressional races, thus our House representatives that go down to Washington as well. We have our senators, our United States, we have our senators, our state senators, and our state assembly people. And those are the legislators that write the laws that protect the people of the state of New York, as well as Westchester County. So these are all very important races to watch. In the last few years, we've managed to not have, in Westchester, in some statewide office, we haven't had a lot of Republican opposition. But this year, there are candidates projected to be on the ballot for every legislative seat, from the Senate to the Assembly to Congress. So obviously, with everything going on nationally, they're getting more encouraged and, to kind of like rise up. And they want to start, the ground starts here, right? If they just take a little bit at a time, they're getting ready for that next presidential race. So everyone has to be on their guard. Remember, these are the midterm elections. They're very important. And then, like with anything else, we have various qualified Democrats who want to run for the same offices, and that'll give the voters a choice at the polls. So what I say is, like I said, we don't always agree, but always make sure that you go exercise your right to vote and make your choice. I mean, I'd always agree with the choice that you are making or I are making, but we have the right to make the choice. And if we don't exercise that right, then really we shouldn't be complaining, right? Because we missed our opportunity. And like I said to you before, primary day is June 28th. Right now, a lot of people are petitioning, which for those of you who don't understand, that means they're going out and getting signatures for people to qualify for the ballot. And that'll be by early May. You'll know who your candidates are in all those races. People are going around right now, and you got to make your choice so that we'll see who's on the ballot in November to ensure that there are that Democrats are on the ballot, because there will be Republicans on the ballot in November. And then we have to make sure we get out the vote. We have to encourage everyone to vote, especially our younger demographics, because this time of year, they're only interested in the presidential races and they don't think any of these other races are very important, but they are. We have to ensure that we keep the majority of the Senate and the House in order to ensure that all of our democratic values and our, progressive ideas and any kind of things like that we want to push forward are going forward. And if we don't vote, we're going to lose control of that, and we know what's going to happen after that.
I watched last year, and I was telling people, pay attention, because Republicans were challenging almost everything. A lot more of the county legislators got challenged. Usually when you win the Democratic primary, you ease on down the yellow brick road to the election, and look what happened to Lakeisha Collins Bellamy. Like, they took that to that. They made it a little scary for her, and James Nolan took the county legislator seat. And then I was looking at all of the other elections around the state and around the country. Like, a lot more Republicans were running in these smaller elections, because that matters. And where the governor matters is, that when that whole thing Trump was trying to do, what he couldn't do. So now he's trying to get people in place. So if he was to run again, yes, and if he was to lose, he had the people in place to overturn the election. Right.
It would definitely be obstructionist to ensuring the certification took place how it needed to go. Again, obviously, like I said, right now there's only 4 major parties, and that's Democratic, Republican, Conservative, Working Families. Used to be a lot more. And during a gubernatorial year, tongue-tied, we sometimes get a lot more parties on the ballot. So if they get over a certain amount of votes, which I think is like 1,000 or something, they become a party. And I know, a few years ago, there were like independent parties went it's too damn high, and some of the other ones. And I'm sure we might even have, oil is too damn high right now, right? Coming out in November for people to run on that. And then those are very important too, to ensure obviously that the major parties keep control, of the top of the ticket and things like that, obviously with the independents as well. But you just have to really, like I said, we have to get out the vote. We have to continue to spread the word, and we have to do it, like you said, starting now. Everyone has to know that the election is coming up. They have to know where their polling place is. If they're not going to be here for elections, they need to make alternatives to voting, whether it's early voting in person or whether it's going to be voting by absentee. So all of that's very important. And again, just like I said, we're not necessarily going to agree on all the choices, but you definitely should make a choice no matter what, and listen to the candidates, whether you can go to those forums, participate in those forums. I know we're kind of coming out of the pandemic where some things are going back in person, some things are still virtual. There's going to be hybrids of both of those as the numbers rise and jump around. And I know that kind of has people scared, but don't let the pandemic stop you from voting. You do have the right to vote, albeit by mail if you don't want to go out and rub elbows, as they say, because we're all rubbing elbows now with no mask on. And that's also very important. And don't be scared of the rhetoric behind the pandemic and COVID and things like that, because that's also being used to discourage voters and used against people. And just remember, we want to make sure that I want to make sure that my family and my children and myself are just protected, as much as we can be. So.
We definitely going to have you back on. First, I asked you, thanks for being a good sport. Like I basically hit you earlier today, and you said yes. Like so, I didn't have no time to make a flyer and promote it. So everybody didn't know you was going to be on. So we definitely got to get you. But I definitely wanted to take the time to get as much of this information in as possible. Talking about you started talking about, that's another thing we're seeing around the country, voter suppression. In all forms, are there things being done to prevent that from taking place as much in our county or whatever?
I mean, honestly, I can tell you that there haven't been, in my years of history, there haven't been so many. During the last presidential race, there were attempts at voter suppression. There were people riding around with Trump sign, things like that in their trucks and things like that around polling places. But we were able to really deploy the local police departments and the county police to get those people basically removed. Some people got, arrested or questioned in regards to some of their actions. And we were able pretty much, I would say, to fairly contain that pretty well. As soon as that was reported, we got right into action and handled that as soon as possible. And it wasn't as huge as it was in a lot of other areas. I anticipate that going forward, though, it's obviously going to get worse before it gets better. And we're going to have to, like I said, stay on guard as well, particularly in some of the ethnic and some of the less affluent areas. People are going to try that and see if people will be intimidated or discouraged because they were just trying to drive around when people were waiting on some of those long lines, to get the people like, oh, no, I don't want to deal with this. And then, we had the people going in, the anti-vaxxers, the people who didn't want to wear the masks. And obviously that caused a little delay because we had certain protocols in place in order to ensure that those people weren't affecting the other people who chose to wear the mask. And we basically handled those pretty well. So we didn't have too many reported incidents of that sort of thing going on. So we handled that, and we handled that expeditiously and as soon as we're notified. So.
Cool. So breaking it down. So dates, can you share? What is the last day to register to vote in the primary? Or what is the last day, and as far as changing your party affiliation, what is the last day to do that? Because I know some of that might have changed.
Okay, so this year, as far as changing your party affiliation, that actually the deadline has passed. That now becomes February 14th for the year. So that now anybody changing their party, it will not unfreeze until after the primary election. You can still put it in, but it's not going to change until after the June primary election.
But will it be in effect for the general election?
Yes, it will become effective in the general election. But as a lot of people may not be aware, You
Right.
don't have to be registered in any party in the general.
Right.
Okay, as far as the specific deadline for the primary, I'm not 100% sure, so don't worry, I didn't have that for you.
Okay.
I'll share that, but the election is June 28th. So hold on one second. As you said, you did ask me last minute, so give me a second.
No, absolutely last minute. Because we talked and you were like, yeah, and then I said, did you watch the show? You said, yeah. And then I hit you this afternoon. Can you come on? you said yeah. And I was so happy that you said yes.
Yeah,
and I was like,
it's a quiet day. Give me 1 minute.
Okay. Yes. We are talking to the new Westchester County Board of Election Commissioner Tajian Nelson. She is the first Black female to serve in that position, and she is filling the position that was held by Reggie Lafayette for a long time.
Okay, so here we are. So the registration deadline for the June primary election, hold on, is going to be, there's so many dates, it's going to be June 3rd.
Okay.
June 3rd is the last day to register in person to be eligible to vote in the primary election this year. Okay. You're going to need to postmark that application, and we're going to have to receive it by June 8th. Now, here's something I will say, and we didn't touch on this. Due to the ever-growing difficulties with some of the mail processing, as we know, with the Postal Service, if you are registering to vote by mail, you should get that application in way before the last day, because like I said, we need to get it by the 8th. And unfortunately, over the last couple of years, the Postal Service has warned us that due to the massive volumes of mail, they can't always guarantee delivery of the mail at a certain point. So again, if you're really concerned and you're not already registered to vote, please do so as soon as possible and get those in as soon as possible. And then after you've mailed in your voter registration, if you've done that way earlier than June 3rd, you should check. Don't wait until the day of the election, please, to notify us so that we can ensure that if for some reason we didn't receive your voter registration form, we can still get you in to register to vote. Now, I'd also mentioned days for early voting in case you don't want to wait until June 28th. And that's going to be June 18th through the 26th, which means it starts Saturday, June 18th, and it'll go through January 26th. Okay. And you can apply in person for an absentee ballot. If you're, like I said, you're going to be out of the state or out of the country, if you happen to be going on a nice vacation, which of course this year obviously I won't be because I'm the election commissioner, then you can apply for your ballot in person up until the day before on June 27th. Okay.
So let me ask you a question. So hypothetically, I'm going out of town.
Yes.
I get my absentee ballot.
Right.
I know I heard stories about before Trump was slowing down the post office and stuff. I'm a little nervous. I want to make sure y'all get it. Can I actually bring it in before I leave town? Like to hand it into the, okay.
Yes, right to 25 Caropus Street, right to the counter. We clock it in right then. We'll process it. So you absolutely, as soon as you get it, you could drop it off or you can have an agent drop it off for you. And if you're unable to come, you know your friend or your mother is going to go to the polls on election day, you can give it to her and she can drop it off in her absentee ballot box that's available there too. So
there'll be absentee ballot boxes at the election sites when you vote?
Yes, in order for you to drop off your absentee ballot. Yes, that's correct.
Like I already knew the answer to that, but I want people to know,
Yes. But you can absolutely come in person to the Board of Elections, the main office at 25 Caropus Street. And then you're able to drop it off at any of the 300 plus polling sites on election day, whether it's you or someone else on your behalf.
So to register, can that be done online now? What are the different ways that I can register?
Well, online registration right at the present time is only available through the DMV website. So you don't have to be doing any transactions, though. There's an option to register there, and then that's actually imported into our system, and then we export the information. The only thing I will say is that when you register at the DMV, it can take a few weeks in order for that process to become active in our system. So if anyone is trying to become active right away, prove their residency, or trying to do petitioning, it's better to actually do the form. whether you download it online or get it at one of the clerk's offices or off our website, and then bring it into the office or mail it right away. Stuff like that. Like right now we have people who are trying to be eligible to carry petitions. So they're coming in and they're bringing their forms and saying, hey, when can I start collecting signatures? And you can start that day, but you want to just be in the system timely as soon as possible. So I would say to everybody, if you're not registered to vote, if you're registering, please do so as soon as possible. And to the parents and the students, hey, if you're 16 or 17, get your form in now, because the minute you turn 18, you're eligible. So no more of your mom saying, hey, you're 18, get that form. You can get it in early.
So how does that work? They fill out the same form and just do it early?
Yes, they do.
Okay.
And then we put it in the system, and there's like an automatic changeover when they turn 18. It flips for them, and then they're eligible to vote.
And then they'll get that little card in the
Yes.
mail telling them where their polling site is. Yeah.
Yes, when they turn 18, yep, they get their own voter card in the mail.
Is there anything I did not ask you that you want people to know about you, about the Board of Elections, about politics, about whatever?
I think we covered mostly everything. There is a Board of Elections website, www.westchestergov.com/BOE. You can go there for forms, keep up to date with the election dates, the calendar, any sort of activities going on in the Board of Elections, how to vote by absentee, your voter registration forms in English and Spanish. There's also accessible ballot for those who have accessible readers on their computers, whether you're blind or have some sort of handicap that facilitates you needing to vote by the ballot in that manner. And again, I would say stay tuned and look out. You know, we're trying to organize some voter education forums and things like that throughout the county and in the schools. And I'll share that with you, AJ, once those are set up, because we're just trying to ensure that everyone does know they have the right to vote, to be registered to vote, and to understand how to vote, different ways that they can vote.
I tried to reach out to when they're like Mount Vernon when there was a new superintendent, when there's, you know, a new, I hope that you utilize us however you need to. In other words, like if there's a message you need out to the community that you really need out, please utilize us, whether it's in an editorial or however you want. You have an open door policy. If you need to come on the show to discuss something, to reach our community, maybe we'll talk about coming back on, I guess, just before the primary, maybe and back again before the election. You know what I'm saying? And then I can promote it a little bit better, and we can put a flyer, and everybody will know you're coming on. You know,
right. I will absolutely do that as we, you know, start to promote more of our information about the election, the calendar, those particular dates that we put on our website. I'll absolutely share that with you and highlight the specific dates, including the ones that we went over, so that you can share it with your supporters and, you know, all of your followers and things like that going forward.
All right. Thank you for coming on the show. I look forward to the great things that you're going to do and how, you know, things look under your leadership. And hopefully you will bring them into, not that he was behind the times, but hopefully, you know, younger blood, you'll bring it into the future a little bit more, or whatever, you know, needs to be done. I don't know, you know, what that is, but. Sorry. Yeah. Did you hear me or you didn't hear me? Okay, I can't hear. So I wanted to make sure I came on before I end. So today we were airing previous interviews that may or may not have been seen. The first hour we aired Terry Watson, who promoted his book, and we aired the interview that we did in March with Tajian when she first took over as the Democratic Westchester County Board of Election chairwoman. And I think we want to get her back on going into the November election. I thought it was good to show that interview with the election coming up, but so many things have been changed since then. We've had the redistricting, which made a second primary, and you know, all of that. So we'll bring her back on to talk just before the November election. So I say that to say, you know, Nicole, Bob, and a few others had questions. The reason I didn't ask your question is because this was pre-recorded and I didn't get to your questions, but I did make note of them. And when we bring her back on, we can definitely talk about that kind of stuff. And I'll make sure I promote it so y'all can come on and ask it then, and I can ask her. I just want to thank everybody for tuning in. Like I said, our guests backed out at the last minute, so we had to put together a show. So I wanted to show 2 interviews that may have not been seen before. That's it. With that, don't forget to go out if you still have not. Pick up a copy of my book, Black Westchester, The Origin Story and How My Faith Was Instrumental in This Great Experiment. It's available on Amazon, or you can order an autographed copy from me via Cash App or PayPal. Just email me, Mr. MR. Oh, what you see right there, Mr. AJ Woodson at gmail.com. And that's my IG handle too. Hit me and I will give you the, we'll tell you how you can order it directly from me and have it mailed to you, or you pick it up or whatever. So, yeah, make sure you do that. And Damon has several books. You can find them all on Amazon. Just put his name in and all his books will come out. Definitely support those as well. That's it. With that, I think that's it. Thank you all for tuning in. You could have been doing anything else, but you decided to ride with us. We greatly appreciate it. This has been another episode of Black Westchester Presents, the People Before Politics radio show. Until next time, peace. You are now tuned into the People Before Politics radio show, brought to you by the good folks at
Black Westchester, Black Westchester, Black Westchester, Black Westchester, check the newspaper. Black Westchester, Black Westchester, Black Westchester, check the newspaper.
Real talk for the community since 2014.